Hello and welcome to this week on Drinking with Dave. So this week we are reviewing Heinecan't, which is a batch of beer that I made for my sister for her birthday. It's a little late, but what can you do? The beer is a Cooper's Draft, which was made with standard glucose dextrose monohydrate sugar. 23 liters of water were added, 1 kilogram of sugar. The wort was 23 degrees centigrade throughout. First taste was 4 or 5 days ago, I think. The original gravity was 1.056 and the final gravity was 1.006, which is a big drop, which means that the approximate alcohol of this beer is somewhere between 6.8 and 7.2%. So it's a strong one. On to the tasting. Well, for a start, head is non-existent, which is a function of how strong the beer is. It's not very malty at all, really. It's kind of an orangey color, yellow, orangey, verging on, it's a kind of a tangerine color, I suppose. Head is pretty much non-existent, lacing the same. Carbonation is actually quite good. Anyway, on to the smell here. It smells just like your standard European lager. It's Cooper's Draft, so a draft beer would probably be what you'd think of here. It does kind of just smell like a Carlsberg or a Heineken or a Stella Artois. Actually, is probably the strongest smell. Anyway, on to the taste. Well, it's apparent how much alcohol is in it for a start. That Stella hop, or whatever that hop is that's in this, it's pretty strong on the aftertaste. When I've been describing this beer to people, I've described it as a malt liquor, generally from the strength and the color and the head retention and stuff, but it actually doesn't taste that much like malt liquor. It doesn't have that horrible chemical altered taste to it. It's just very strong. It's apparent how strong it is. You wouldn't drink this thinking it's like a 4%. You're aware of the strength. It's a pretty thin mouthfeel. It was made with the glucose dextrose monohydrate sugars, so the yeast kind of went to town on those, and there wasn't much malt to it. The beer would probably be greatly improved by adding dry malt extract, and we're actually moving away from that now. We're not making any of the future beers with that sugar. Not that I have anything against it, but it produced this beer, and while this is by no means atrocious, it's not up to the standard of the other beers that we've made so far, so I think we're moving away from the sugar. I'll give you my tasting notes here that I have written down. Usually I taste one beer cold and one warm. I didn't want to try this warm, so I didn't. As a malt liquor taste, it's kind of sour, kind of almost an IPA style kind of sourness to it, but without a lot of IPA hop. It kind of has a Carlsberg Special Brew or Stella Artois hop, that kind of thing. And very thin on the mouthfeel because of the lack of malt, and it's not a body. There's not a lot of body to this beer. It did turn out incredibly clear though, which is nice. It's the clearest one we've had so far. It's kind of boozy, strong alcohol. There's an occasional banana smell to it towards the end of the pint. A little bit of sweet aftertaste, but nothing really to note. Occasionally the head can be pretty good, but not on this one. But most of them, I think the head is pretty much non-existent. It's almost like cider, to be honest. The way the head just goes off it. So pretty large bubbles, orange color. It's not as bad as I make it out to be. Seriously, it's not. It's actually not as bad as I make it out to be. It's just not up to the standard of the other ones we made. It tastes like beer you would buy in a can, a relatively cheap beer that you would buy in a can. And that's okay if you were looking to make that, and this brew was not particularly expensive, but with making the home brew, we're looking for a higher quality product. But this matches canned beer, and I suppose that's okay. On to this week in brewing. Now, this week in brewing, we're making the Canadian Blonde. You may have seen the videos. I'll link to them. You can click the beer poster there behind me. Actually, I'll link to the videos of making the Canadian Blonde, so that you can watch that. That'll be ready sometime. Well, it won't be ready, but it'll be ready for bottling sometime around Thursday or Friday. So we'll bottle that then. Then we're going to go to my sister's house on Friday to do a tasting of this, kind of a mass tasting, because I've only had one or two of these to this point, so I haven't really got a full whack of it. So the Canadian Blonde's coming along well. The dry malt extract is definitely a big plus on that beer. I asked last week for questions and I didn't get any on the comments yet. I filmed these on a Tuesday and I upload them on the Friday, so there wasn't really enough time for people to comment on the video. The videos don't get, you know, a massive amount of views or comments, so at this stage. So what I thought I would talk about is the sugar, since we're using different sugars. This one was made with the standard sugar, and you can see it's very clear, it's nicely carbonated, and it's a fast fermentation when you use the standard white sugar. Essentially, the glucose dextrose monohydrate or brewer's sugar is just white sugar, so we almost may as well use table sugar. The next step up from that is beer enhancer, which is usually half spray malt and half white sugar. So you retain the quicker fermentation time, but you add more malt and body to the beer, because when you use dry malt extract or spray malt, not all of it is fermentable. It's not entirely fermentable sugar, which means that the stuff that's left behind unfermented adds to the body and the richness and the kind of the better mouthfeel of the beer. Now, a step up from brew enhancer is dry malt extract or spray malt, as it's sometimes referred to. It's just powdered malt, the exact same stuff that's in the cans, but it's unhopped. So the liquid malt extract is turned into is spray dried into a fine powder, and you add that to your beer, and that really bulks up the body and the maltiness of the beer. So I do suggest using spray malt, or at the very least brew enhancer. You can get relatively good beers. I mean, the wheat beer we used with the standard sugar, and that turned out quite well. I was a big fan of that. So yes, I was a big fan of the wheat beer with the standard sugar. So it's not all bad, but it really depends on your strain of yeast, and this was a very aggressive strain of yeast, and it really went to town on this beer. It gets better as you go down, but there is a kind of a hop oiliness to it. The mouthfeel isn't great. That's probably the main complaint about the beer, is that the mouthfeel isn't very good. So a step above the spray malt then, in terms of sugar, would be liquid malt, and that's the only one we haven't tried yet, because we've tried dry malt extract, we've tried spray malt, we've tried brew enhancer, we've tried regular sugar. A couple of things we haven't tried yet are honey, which we would like to do, and I think that shall be the first brew of the springtime, will be a wheat beer with honey instead of sugar. The other thing we haven't tried is liquid malt extract, which is essentially you can get extra cans of malt extract, but it's in liquid form, so that'll bulk up the richness in the body of the beer as well. And you could even get a bigger hop note if you used two identical Cooper's cans. Say if you use 2 cans of Cooper's Draft, you'd double the hop note. The other sugars that we haven't used, we haven't got our hands on any corn sugar or cane sugar, or I've seen various other things that people use that are fermentables, but we don't really have that many options for the sugars. So there'll be a liquid malt extract brew coming up within the next 5 or 6 weeks on a run up to Christmas. I'm going to start making some dark beers now, so I'm going to start with maybe a stout, and then I talked about doing the ale. So we're going to move into dark beers now. So if you would like any of your questions answered, you could just pop them down in the comment box down there. And if you find this video informative or interesting, if you give me one of the thumbs up likes down there, that would help me out a lot. So I'll catch you all next week on Drinking with Dave.